Hi all, it's Emily Rand with ESPN Esports. Welcome back to another episode of LPL Corner. It's just me again this week, and next week we're actually going to be off, so we're skipping next week of LPL Corner. This actually would have been the week to do it because I know the NALCS throwback show match is going on right now, so thank you to anyone and everyone who's in the live chat, and thank you to people who are watching this on YouTube later as well. Now that we're just past mid-season in LPL, I really wanted to discuss some frontrunners for All-Pro Team, Rookie of the Split, and MVP thus far in the league. So I did ask people to give me their kind of preliminary frontrunners on Twitter. The first thing I wanted to talk about is that Weiwei is actually not a rookie. And he was on Suning previously. They called him up from the Suning LDL roster, and he played for Suning a lot last year. When he came over with BBU, people were they were like, okay, how well are these guys going to do? Because they were like middling, like just very average players when they were on Suning last year. So we definitely didn't see the kind of performances that Weiwei has been showing this split with Victory 5. So I did want to establish that because I feel like a lot of times what happens in the LPL, especially for Western viewers, is because there's so many players to keep track of. And a lot of times you might not notice if players are on worse teams or they only got a start or they weren't starting for the entirety of the split. I know people were mistakenly thinking that Puffin and Southwind were rookies last split when they were doing so well with IG when they were previously on Peachy. So yeah, Weiwei came over from Suning Gaming actually. And although he didn't play for them as much this spring, he did play for them last year. So not a rookie, but spoiler alert, I'm going to be mentioning him for one of my positions. So I guess we'll start with the we'll go top down through the positions for All Pro Team. The first player I really want to talk about in top lane is 369, who I think this past spring arguably it was Zoom, but 369 was still in the conversation because that's when you really saw him coming into his own. And this entire split, he has just been phenomenal, regardless of what the team has wanted him to do. I think if there's only one criticism you could levy against him, it's that sometimes he's a little too quick on the teleport plays, especially when he's TPing bot side for Dragon or for more likely a bot lane skirmish, actually. Sometimes he's a little bit either too early or maybe the entry might be a little weird. But on the whole, I think 369 has just been phenomenal all split. I actually think that until recently, all of JDD looked like they were kind of struggling until recently. And that actually did include Zoom, despite the fact that I obviously have a ton of respect for Zoom and he was my top laner of spring. I think that all of JDD, given the fact that they kind of struggled a bit early, right now that's another reason why 369 is my front runner. It's very easy to say that 369 is doing well because obviously Karsa is doing super well and he has Knight and he has, everyone on this team is a superstar except for Yuganja. I'm sorry, Yuganja. So I think that obviously he does also benefit from his team, but 369 has really showed some insanely smart laning. I feel like his laning has only improved since we've seen him in the league and even since last split. He's usually pretty smart about matchups and how to play the lane depending on where Karsa is going, depending on what Knight and Karsa want to do, and also depending on whether, again, he's TPing bot side to help out bot lane skirmishes since the meta just in general is a lot more bot lane focused now. So that's why 369 instead of Zoom actually is my early frontrunner for top laner of the split. Jungle is a lot more contentious. I actually think there are several junglers you could choose here. Karsa is one. I'm not going to go like super in depth with Karsa just because I feel like a lot more people know of Karsa from his time on RNG and Flash Wolves, but I do want to give him a mention because he's been playing really well. And then for me, it comes down to two junglers, Weiwei, who I mentioned off the top, just because I did want to mention that he's not a rookie, and Beishang. I'm going to touch on Beishang first because Weiwei is actually my front runner right now, so Beishang is my runner-up. Beishang is an insane teamfight jungler. He sometimes has positioning better than an AD carry in some of their team fights. And it's actually super impressive. He was someone who kind of burst onto my radar and a lot of people's radar when he kind of became the difference maker in Team WE, unlikely going to playoffs last spring when they ended up in playoffs and they were off to a really, really rough start in 2019 spring split. And Beishang starting was actually one of the reasons why that kind of like propped up the team and carried the team to playoffs along with then like Xie and Mystic. I think that Beishang deserves a lot of credit for what he's doing on WE. WE is such a weird team to kind of try to pick apart. If you look at who has actually won the most in-game like LPL Man of the Match or Player of the Game awards, it's been Jomong, who unfortunately don't think is top in his position when compared to a lot of other LPL AD carries, although I do like the lane of him and Missing, so I think Missing is really, really good as well. So it's kind of funny that Beishang flies under the radar on this Team WE team a lot of the time because you have Morgan, who people knew studied under Zoom and was doing super well. You have Teacher Ma, who everyone, kind of writes off as the poor man's Doinby, but also it's very apparent he's like a super big part of the way the team plays because they arguably have to play that way because every champion he plays is basically a version of Aurelion Sol. But I really like how, like, I even wrote about this previously, but I like team are definitely themselves, and that's okay. And where Beishang fits in this is that he just does such a great job, like, facilitating lanes, but then also when he has to, like I said, when I think about him and when I think about his, like, true defining strength over other LPL junglers, it's definitely his team fighting, his team fight positioning. He's so smart about that. And that's why I think, again, like, I wouldn't disagree with anyone who said, like, Beishang, Karsa, or Weiwei are their like top jungler for all pro team right now, just because all three of them are having an insane split. I am giving the edge to Weiwei over Beishang for a few reasons. I think that Weiwei is such a weirdly underrated part of this Victory 5 roster. When you look at people talking about Victory 5, I think they tend to talk about Mole because of how he was rotated through every position last split and finally is really coming into his own as like a secondary carry and facilitator in the mid lane. And he's really smart about that, and he works with Weiwei actually really well to make those plays. But Weiwei has shown just incredible flexibility and a lot of intelligence around how Victory 5 go after early buffs from their opponents. And I know that a lot of the shot calling credit has actually been given to PP God, which is their new support as well. And I think that's why Weiwei is kind of overshadowed on this team. And a lot of his like early proactive plays are overshadowed on this team is because Samdi and PP God have definitely stolen the show when it comes to people talking about Victory 5. PP God specifically, just because he's been playing super, super well. He's an early contender for Rookie of the Split. And he in English has a funny name that I have had to explain to a few Chinese journalists as to why people find it funny that he's called PP God. So I think Weiwei deserves a lot of credit for how well this team has performed and where this team is at. And he's actually going to have a pretty insane test of junglers to run through because upcoming schedule for Victory 5 is really, really tough. And even so, he's going to have to go through Karsa first on top. He's going to have to go through Ning, who's been playing like, I'm not going to say he's back to his world championship form because he isn't, but I actually think he's been playing a lot better than expected. And then Suning, I think, will be slightly less of a challenge. But I am curious to see how he goes up against Karsa and Ning going forward in weeks 7 and 8. Because I think those will be a really good tests for Wei Wei. But right now, as much as I know the English language casters and Chinese casters have said that PP God is such a massive voice around this team's early game and how successful they have been. I think that I really wanted to give Wei Wei a lot of credit for how well Victory 5 have done early, additionally, because outside of some of the, like obviously you do have Samdi and PP God getting 2v2 kills sometimes on their own. I think that Wei Wei has a lot to do with a lot of the stuff they do mid and top side, coordinating with PP God, and then also invading enemy buffs to control buffs and then go after neutral objectives in those areas as well, which is really smart. And I like the way Victory 5 do that. And so, yeah, that's why Wei Wei is my front runner. But again, I would not disagree with anyone who said Beishang and Karsa. In some of the answers I received on Twitter, actually a lot of people said Karsa. They also said Wei Wei. And there was one for Beishang as well. So I think the big thing with Wei Wei is that I don't know. I feel like he deserves a lot of credit for. Let's see, chat. I still think Jakulov is the least bit overrated, but I think he's the worst member on TES right now. Again, all the players on TES are really good, and Jakulov has somewhat decent shot calling ability, and also Mole. I think Mole is underrated because of the teammates they had. One thing I think that's always super interesting about Mole, and I'm going to mention him in the mid lane discussion next, because I think he also deserves a nod in the mid lane discussion, despite the fact that he is not my top mid lane pick either. Is that Mole, now that he is more relaxed, you can really see his intelligence about the game and how he moves from mid lane. I think because he was stretched so thin last year, we didn't get to see a lot of his actual mid laning. And now that he is back in his actual position and is able to, work with Wei Wei, work with PP God, I do think that they're drawing from him and his intelligence about how he plays that lane. I'm not sure if Mo was underrated though, because I feel like I think people recognized him for his mechanics. I'm not sure if they recognized him for his intelligence and late game knowledge though. So hopefully people are starting to do that now with Victory 5. I think with mid lane, it's really frustrating. Someone said on Twitter, rookie for MVP, but Knight as first all-team pro. This is a failing of me. I think it's really difficult for me to separate someone's impact on the team and their like perceived impact on their win rate and just raw mechanical talent. Because I think if you come down to raw mechanical talent and matchups and stuff like that, I think Knight is first mid lane all pro. I can't necessarily separate those things, and I know for a fact that this enters the MVP discussion as well, but IG would not be where they are if it hadn't been Rookie beasting them 1v9 so much, which is why he is actually my first mid laner. I might amend that by the end of the split and maybe change my parameters around it, but right now, there's no way that IG is where they are if Rookie is not playing as well as he has, and if he had not come up with as many clutch plays as he has. And Rookie does so much for this team, not just in like insane team fighting plays as Syndra, but also just as a mid laner, having that be a control point on the map, how he moves from mid, roam timings, back timings, like everything like that. Rookie is very, very smart about the game. He's very experienced. I think IG relies on that a lot. I also think it's unfortunate to talk about Rookie after last night, when I think he had probably his worst performance of the entire split just last night, which is so like, you know, unlucky timing, I guess, to be talking about how good of a mid Rookie is, but I maintain that IG would be nowhere near they are in the standings if it hadn't been for Rookie, especially given how terrible they looked in their first few games where, you know, Rookie was the only player, in my opinion, that was playing well at all. So I think that's why I am picking Rookie over Knight. Again, I think this comes down to personal preference and your own parameters for what you think is best, right? I think that if you're just going on just absolute dominion of mid lane matchup statistics, like there's no one better than Knight. He is probably the best mid laner in the world right now. I know there are a lot of people who would still argue that, but I would say that Knight is probably the best mid in the world. I am unfortunately really weird about MVP values. Although arguably top wouldn't be where they are without Knight either. So maybe I will amend that by the end of the split. Right now I did want to shout out Rookie though, because again, IG would definitely not be 7-3 if it weren't for Rookie beasting it to get them there. AD carry is going to be super contentious. So I know chat is going to disagree with me right away because Jackie Love is the worst member on TES is still a message in there. But I think that I actually think if you were going through worst, it'd probably still be Georgia. IG will not make Worlds anyway if they don't change their AD carry. Agree. They've been swapping through supports to try to cover it up, but I actually don't think Southwind was the problem. I think it's going to be a rough road for IG. I still think it's going to be a challenge for them to win Worlds based on how many teams are coming up around them and behind them. So for AD carry, there are a ton of options actually, and a lot of them I wouldn't disagree with. I do want to shout out. I don't think he's anywhere near the best AD carry in China actually, but I do want to shout out Logan, who's having a career split, I think. At the beginning of the year when JDG were really struggling, it was actually Logan who was the most consistent player on this lineup. So I'm really happy to see that he's been performing better. And yeah, he's not my pick, but I wanted to shout him out because I think, especially at the beginning of the split, he performed really well. I did pick Jackie Love. I think, again, this is probably me getting a little too caught up in perceived intangibles. So this is another one that I'll definitely revisit before the end of the split, because I think you could easily argue, to chat's point, that there are a lot of other AD carries that have been performing a lot better than Jackie Love has. The one thing I do want to say about Jackie Love is that since he joined the team, and this is not since he joined the team, he transformed their comms and suddenly Knight and Karsa are have insane synergy. I don't want to credit him for all of that, but what I do want to partially credit him for is the fact that Yu Yanja looks so much more composed and isn't making nearly as many mistakes as we did see him make for most of spring. And I can't help but think that that is him working together with Jackie Love as his laning partner. I still think he was performing really well. I would also agree that 369 Karsa and Knight, I would argue Yanja I would argue Jackie Love is just raw performing better than Yanja, but 369 Karsa and Knight are all in discussion for All-Pro as well, arguably in first. Like I said, you could easily put Karsa there. I did pick 369 as the best top. And then Knight, obviously, for mid lane is always is the best mid laner in the world right now, probably. For AD carry, there are actually a lot of really good Chinese AD carries right now that you have. I actually think the duo lane itself, but specifically, I do think Huan Feng has been playing really well. I also think that Kramer has finally been playing better, where in spring he really, really struggled. I would like to see, it's really difficult because I don't even think he's performed particularly well this split, but I would like to see Chamuji on a better team because I think he has so much raw potential, and I'd really like to see him moved somehow up to one of the stronger teams to see how well he would perform. I think Wink is still actually performing really well, which is sad because E-Star is not doing super, super hot. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of interesting things going on in the AD carry. Samdi is another one that I think deserves a nod, but I did still put Jackie Love over. And then we still don't really know what's going on with RNG since they've been testing out Gala, but I actually think that Betty is still really good too. And I'm not really sure why they have been kind of swapping out other than maybe they're just really trying to see like where does Cryan fit in with Betty, where does Xiaohu fit in with Gala, who knows. But yeah, AD carry is really contentious because I think there are a lot of really talented players that aren't necessarily on like top teams. And then some of the AD carries on top teams, like for example, Joe Mung, who has won a lot of awards and is playing better, but isn't as mechanically talented, I think, as some of the other people in their position. RNG is doomed, them and EDG. It's sad because I consider both these teams kind of bot lane focused teams, so you'd think that the meta would be good for them. But yeah, they're both looking really rough right now. And then on to support. The support position, overwhelmingly, people were like PP God, best support, and also PP God rookie for the split. I think PP God for sure is the rookie of the split. I also did pick him as my support, and again, this is based on a lot of things I've just heard from Chinese journalists and the Chinese cast from the LPL English language casters. Sorry, for the LPL cast, which they heard from Chinese casters, is that he is actually like not only just a really strong mechanical talent, but is also a very strong voice on this team. And a lot of the early proactive plays that V5 makes are his idea. So not only is he just incredibly mechanically gifted, but he is also kind of making a name for himself in a similar way that I think Ming and Mako made names for themselves when they first came onto the scene as rookies. Obviously, that's a big ask to suddenly have him be as good as they are. And have the careers that they have thus far. But I do think that he deserves definitely rookie the split. And right now he is my support choice because we've seen a lot of weird things happening in support. I think other supports are performing well, just to give like a cursory glance. I still think Ming is performing pretty well. I think Yu Yanja has gotten better, but I still wouldn't put him up there as a top support. I think Sword Art has actually been performing surprisingly well, despite the fact that I'm really not super sold on Suning. Missing is my like other support that I actually think would arguably be first team all support from Team WE. I think Missing and Peixiang do so much for this team, like so much for this team. And one of the reasons why, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Joe Mung because I think he's performed a lot better actually. He's becoming like a legitimately good AD carry, whereas previously I think he was pretty average. and made a lot of mistakes. And he still does make some mistakes, but I think the growth of the Jomung missing lane has been really great. And also missing is an incredibly talented support. So he deserves a shout out, despite the fact that I did end up going with PP God for my support and rookie of the split. Lastly, MVP candidates. I think this is where a lot of people here deviated, where they were like, someone said rookie for MVP, someone said Mole for MVP, which I actually think is good. A lot of rookies, because of what I talked about previously when I talked about rookie, is that IG would definitely not be anywhere near where they're at in the standings if it weren't for rookie, like absolutely dragging them there. And that to me is the definition of MVP. So despite the fact that I will probably, by the end of the split, if things keep going the way they are, probably change my pick to Knight for first all-team pro for mid lane. I do think that rookie is a really early front runner for MVP of the split, just because of how far IG have been able to get while playing like still pretty sloppily, and also having a lot of really underwhelming performances from at least one of their players in every single game. And actually, as it so happens, rookie was pretty underwhelming last night. So again, it's kind of weird to be talking about him as an MVP candidate just coming off of the BLG series. But I do think that IG, like I just cannot stress enough that IG would be nowhere near the top of the standings if it weren't for rookie. So that's why he's my early MVP frontrunner. I also agree that RNG is doomed and EDG. I know we don't have a lot of people in chat this week, again, because the show match is going on. So if no one has any further questions, I'll wait for a few questions to pop up. But if they don't, I just wanted to go through all of my positions. So for people who weren't paying attention, I picked 369 Weiwei, Rookie, Jaculov, and PP God as my all-team. I picked Rookie for MVP and PP God for Rookie of the Split. And they show match lol. Yeah, and then we have LCS in half hour. So from what you've seen, who is the best IG support? I actually did say earlier, I think it can be Karsa or Beishang. So if anyone says Karsa or Beishang, I wouldn't actually agree with their decision. I think I actually really do want to see more of like, I don't like how they keep swapping. I don't think, like I said, I don't think Southwind was the problem, but I would love to see them settle on Rehale and see how well he can do. I think it's always going to be a little bit difficult for a support to come on to IG, given how volatile the map is right now, especially with IG, but also just because even when Ning is at his best, he is a very volatile jungler, and support jungle synergy is just super important for controlling the map along with the mid laner. I think right now in a bot lane focused meta, what IG do need alongside Puff, because I think Puff, has a lot of his issues and deficiencies have definitely been exposed by other LPL teams, is that they need a really strong laning support. And I think that Rehale is not the solution. He probably isn't the solution. I don't actually think IG have a solution, but I would like to see them give Rehale a chance if they feel like Southwind isn't working. Of all three of them, I actually think Southwind is the best, honestly, from what I've seen. But for whatever reason, they've been swapping him out. So I'm not on the team. I have no idea what their decision making is behind that. If they're identifying that Southwind is apparently the issue instead of Puff, I respectfully disagree. The Shy won't be full swapping to ADC. That could be even worse, maybe. The Shy is someone who's just so insanely mechanically talented and plays way too far up in lane sometimes. The reason why I say give Rehale a chance is because if they're not going to continue to give Southwind a chance, I'd like to see another young player try to come in and at least get some LPL experience. But that's not me thinking of the team. That's me thinking of it would be cool to see Rehale get more LPL experience just to see how good he is, because I feel like I haven't seen enough of him to say one way or the other. So right now, in answer here, as the coming full circle, I'd actually pick Southwind over Belen and Rehale right now, but they seem pretty intent on swapping him out. So Shy has been playing nothing but bottom lane and solo queue for the last month and a half. Also, Emily, you need to get C9 out of the top 10 in your power rankings. They're unfortunately not my power rankings. I just vote. I'm one of many people who vote on them. So I do know, I think I'm one of the only people that watches all of LPL though. So, which is, I love watching LPL, but it's also really hard for me to rank LPL teams because I'm really harsh on teams that I like. It's actually, I think, a pretty big deficiency of mine as an analyst, where I'll be overly harsh of teams' weaknesses, especially with Chinese teams, because they, again, I've said this before, I think their greatest strength is that they have really specific play styles. And I think the weakness in that is that if someone can counter that, you automatically see all of the flaws within that play style as well, right? And Chinese teams are really good, I think, at identifying and exploiting each other's flaws, especially when it comes to playoffs. Like there'll be teams where they'll let them get away with a lot of stuff in regular season that they won't be able to get away with in playoffs. And this happens every year in LPL, like without fail. Happened with E-Star last split. I still think the most famous example is 2015 Snake, just because it was really easy to mark and identify when teams started banning out Beast and Baka. But yeah, I think that's why it's actually really difficult for me to rate LPL teams, is because I'm always overly harsh on them. And certain things I might forgive other teams, I won't forgive LPL teams. So that's a deficiency on my part. KT beat Dragon X and lost to Sandbox. I think that is hilarious. I was laughing so hard last night when I was looking at the KT series in between. Because I'm trying to think, the first LPL series ended just as KT was starting, I think. What do you think Team W will do with their mid lane logjam? I think Shanks is way more talented than Teacher Ma. I think they really want to play the Join B style with Teacher Ma rather than Shanks carry mid lane style. I think right now I'm actually pretty content with where Team WE are at. I've heard, and this is again from the Jordan Corby from the LPL English broadcast said this on this show last week, and then also they brought it up on their own LPL show that they do every week, that Shanks actually did, especially when it looked like Teacher Mom might not be able to get his account to an LPL qualifying level on the Ionia server. They actually did scrim with Shanks, and it did not go as well. So here's the thing. I think that Team WE right now, I think their secret, like their obvious carry is Jomung, but I think their secret carry is Peishong. And I think that if they want to keep playing that style, Teacher Ma is by far the best mid laner for them. And I think right now bringing in Shanks would really disrupt what's been working so well for this team. So I think that Shanks has been recognized as someone who is talented enough that he's always going to get a starting spot. Like he's inevitably going to be getting a chance to start. Yeah, he's young. Teacher Ma got the dark technologies. Teacher Ma, like I'll agree that he is not as like quote unquote like mechanically talented as Joinby is, although I think he still makes some, like when you play that kind of style, you have to give up certain things in mid lane, right? Which is why you see Tion going to fix the wave a lot. VG is worth mentioning. I'm going to write about them this week, given how they've kind of moved up in the standings recently. I'm not going to touch upon it today, just because we're actually technically out of time. But I do think that thank you for bringing that up, because I think that Vichi's like small rise lately has been really interesting to watch, and I hate to I don't want to have faith in Vici, but I think with the talent they have on this lineup, they should be able to at least make some noise before playoffs. And if you do see if we do see the unlikely scenario of somehow RNG and EDG not making it to playoffs, it'd be really interesting to see some of these teams like Vici trying to find their spot in that kind of mess. I think right now a lot of people are still expecting RNG is going to somehow be able to make it. EDG is really frustrating because they put together some really insanely intelligent games, and then the entire series falls apart after that. I do also think they did get unlucky with Hope not being able to start for a week. Vici lacks a reliable ADC for sure. As much as I think iBoy sometimes is insanely good, yeah, he just sometimes is really not smart about the way he team fights. And you kind of always know he's always going to go in, right? So that is a high risk, high reward thing. And at this point, he has been like that for a while. So I don't see him changing his playstyle up to suit what the team needs. Anyway, I will be talking about VG in my written column this week. And unfortunately, we are off next week, but I'll try to touch upon them when the LPL Corner returns in the week following. And hopefully I'll have a guest for that week as well. Again, thank you everyone for actually who came and watched this stream as opposed to the NA show match, because I didn't realize we were going to be going up against it at the beginning of the week, and I just didn't change the time. And special shout out to Daniel, who's filling in as producer this week. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of LPL Corner. And if you ever want to find me screaming about the LPL, I'm at League of Emily on Twitter for more LPL content and just more League of Legends content in general. You can follow us at ESPN Esports. Thank you so much.